Hello, friends. In 2008, in Arunachal Pradesh, at a height of 12,000 feet, a military camp and road was being built for the Indian Army. A worker working there walked to the local market. After buying what he needed, he started going back up to the military camp before dark. Many hours pass, but he doesn't reach the military camp. There was no sign of him the whole night. The next day, a local man passes by on the same path with his horse. He spots the lost worker beside the road. He was sitting awkwardly. The local thought that the worker was perhaps drunk. He called out to the worker, but he didn't respond. Eventually, when he approached him, he noticed that the worker's neck was broken and he wasn't breathing. He was dead. His phone and money were on the ground near him. This couldn't have been a robbery or a mugging because his valuables were lying there. Had this been a mugging, they wouldn't have left them behind. It didn't seem like his neck was broken due to an accident. Had there been an accident, his body would have been on the ground. But his body was propped up awkwardly. There were no other marks on his body, except his broken neck. Later, when doctors saw the corpse, they said that the damage to the neck cannot be easily caused by a human, because it would require a lot of force. It couldn't have been caused by a wild animal, because there were no claw marks on the corpse. There were no wounds or bleeding, only the broken neck which led to his death. Locals claim that the police found a hair on the corpse. This strand of hair was checked. It belonged to neither a human nor an animal. The police found a footprint too, which made the locals say that it was the footprint of the Yeti. Locals claim that the place where this road was being built, Yeti used to frequent this area. They believed that the worker was killed by a Yeti. Fast forward 11 years from this incident, 29th of April 2019. The Indian Army tweets from its Twitter handle. For the first time, an Indian Army mountaineering expedition team claimed to have seen the footprints of the mythical beast, Yeti. These were 32 inches long and 15 inches wide. On 9th of April 2019, these were seen near the Makalu base camp in Nepal. Before this, Yeti had only been seen in the Makalu Baran National Park. The Indian Army said that the evidence had been photographed and handed over to subject matter experts for scientific evaluation. Is it real? You must have come across mentions of Yeti on social media. But is there any scientific proof of Yeti's existence? Is it really a mystical beast? Or just a misunderstood animal? Friends, let's find out the truth behind this mysterious Yeti in this video.
A hairy monster has been spotted walking across Asian mountains from China to the Himalayas.
Incredible claim by a respected Oxford researcher. He says he has proof that the Yeti, the abominable snowman of the Himalayas, is in fact...
The most famous story regarding Yeti is from 1951. British mountaineer Eric Shipton and with him, Surgeon Michael Ward were looking for an alternative way to climb Mount Everest. They spotted footprints amidst the snow at Menlung Glacier, 13 inches long and 8 inches wide. They looked similar to human feet, but they were much bigger. Eric did not have any equipment to measure the footprint, so he placed his axe beside it and took these pictures. The photos became so popular that they were published in newspapers and magazines all over the world. People all over the world were fascinated by it, and it was seen as strong evidence of Yeti being real. After these pictures were published, it set off a race. People from all over the world, from different countries, come to Himalayan mountains looking for Yeti, hoping to be the first person to discover Yeti.
The search has taken him into some of the most spectacular scenic areas of the world, to breathtaking vistas of natural beauty.
But what does Yeti look like? Those who have claimed to have seen Yeti have some common features in their descriptions. According to them, it is a big ape-like creature and is bigger than humans. It has long arms and a strong chest and abdomen. They claim that it's 7 to 8 feet tall and weighs around 90 to 180 kilograms. Bhutanese people told BBC that apart from its face, the rest of its body is covered with long reddish-brown or gray-black fur, and that it cannot twist its body. It cannot look back. It walks upright on its 2 legs. And in the jungle, it uses its hands and legs to swing from one tree to another. According to them, it carries a big stone in its hand and used it as a weapon. Bhutanese people who believe that Yeti exists say that Yetis are usually seen alone or in pairs, and are rarely seen in groups. They communicate with each other by whistling, and they emit a terrible smell. Sometimes they might even smile or make strange sounds. They are seen as harbingers of bad times and death. According to the stories, Yeti is found in the Himalayan mountains in India, Bhutan, Nepal, and Tibet. Especially in Nepal and Tibet. It lives in high snowy areas. Now, interestingly, we see Yeti being mentioned even in 800-years-old ancient legends, and even in the folklores of the Tibetan ethnic group, Sherpas. In fact, the word Yeti originates from the Tibetan language. The word Yeti comes from the Sherpa word, Ye plus Te. It means cliff-dwelling bear. A bear that lives among the rocks. Mani Kaboom, a religious text from the 12th century Tibet, talks about the connection between humans and Yetis. It also mentions a mythological story. According to this story, there was a bodhisattva monkey sent by God to meditate in Tibet. While he was meditating, a rock ogress Sinmo saw him. She was an incarnation of a Buddhist deity. She asked the monkey to marry her, but the monkey told her that he wanted to remain celibate. The ogress then told him that if he doesn't marry her, she will marry a demon and give birth to many monsters who will destroy everything. Eventually, the monkey married the ogress, and they had 6 monkey-human children. After that, for generations, their lineage kept evolving, and eventually humans were born. But those from the previous generations weren't fully humans, and one of these generations was that of the Yetis. According to this story, the ancestors of Yeti and humans are the same, but the Yeti could not fully evolve into being a human. Stories about Yeti go back thousands of years. Some are even from the pre-Buddhist era. In the Himalayas, some societies and religions used to worship this glacier being. In 1978, many scholars jointly published the book Himalayan Anthropology on the history of the Himalayas. According to this book, Yeti's parts have continued being used in Tibetan religious and magical rituals. This book mentions several interesting historical facts. For example, centuries ago, stories about Yeti were so famous that when Alexander the Great conquered parts of India in 326 BC, he asked to see a Yeti. But the locals refused to let him see it, saying that Yetis can survive only on high mountains. So, it cannot be brought to lower altitudes. In modern times, the first case of spotting a creature like a Yeti was in 1832. British naturalist Brian Hodgson, in his article in the Journal of Asiatic Society of Bengal, mentioned that he came across a giant non-human creature, which was covered with long black fur from head to toe, but ran away just as he was discovered. In his article, he called it an orangutan. Orangutan is an actual ape that exists today, but it isn't found in India. It's a native animal of Indonesia and Malaysia. After this, in 1889, when British Army physician Major L.A. Waddell went to Himalayan glaciers to hunt, he saw some footprints there. These footprints were going up to the glacier and disappeared at the peak. They looked to be of a hominid species like monkeys or humans. Similarly, in 1921, a climber returning from an expedition to the Mount Everest, Charles Howard Barry and his team told the journalist of the English newspaper The Statesman that they had seen some huge footprints. The local guides told them that the footprints were of Meto Kangmi. This word means man, bear, snowman. But the journalist had wrongly translated the word Meto. Instead of man-bear, he translated it as filthy. Later, when this article was published, filthy was changed to abominable, and so the term abominable snowman was coined. It's still used as a synonym for Yeti. By 1937, there were frequent discoveries related to Yeti. Explorer H.W. Tillman saw Yeti's footprints on Zimu Glacier. This year, at the altitude of 19,000 feet on Zimu Glacier, British Army officer John Hunt saw Yeti's footprints too. In the year 1937, in total, 7 expeditions had encountered such footprints, and 2 of these expeditions claimed to have seen Yeti. In their reports, local hunters, guides, and Sherpas claimed that Tibetan monasteries have Yeti's hands and skull. This inflamed the interest among the Westerners, but in the 1930s, no Western foreigner was allowed to enter Nepal. Only some British military officials and diplomats were allowed restricted entry. This was because the ruling dynasty in Nepal back then, the Rana dynasty, did not want to see Western influence in Nepal. But in 1951, the politics in Nepal changed. After this, foreigners could visit easily. And so we get to this famous encounter by Eric Shipton only in 1951. He took this picture of Yeti's footprints, and once again, Yeti became a popular topic all over the world. It was only after this photo that many people from all over the world went to Nepal to look for Yeti. In 1953, the British newspaper Daily Mail sent its expedition. It included many journalists and mountaineers. This expedition cost $1.35 million in today's money. Locals claim that Pangboche Monastery had Yeti's skull. During this expedition, they went to this monastery and took a hair sample from Yeti's skull. When it was sent for analysis, the experts claims that it belonged to neither a human nor an animal, and nor was it hair.
The testing concluded that the hair on the Yeti scalp did not belong to an unknown species or a cryptid creature.
Then, a famous American oilman and millionaire, Tom Slick, undertook multiple expeditions in search of Yeti. In 1957, 1958, and 1959, he searched for Yeti in valleys of East Nepal, including the Aran Valley. In the first expedition, he came across 3 Yeti footprints and strands of hair. On his second expedition, bloodhounds were also used that were trained on mountain lions and bears. He went to 4 monasteries and studied the 2 skulls and mummified hands that were said to be of Yeti. His research on this lasted several months. And after returning to America, Tom Slick said that there might be 3 types of Yeti. One of them supernatural and the others real. He said that one of the real Yetis matched the description based on Eric Shipton's photo. Tom Slick said that he was trying to define the relation between the 3 types of Yetis, but before he could present his findings to the world, he died in an airplane crash. The mystery died with him. This was the peak of Yeti's hype. Several films were made on Yeti, like The Snow Creature in 1954, The Abominable Snowman in 1957. Apart from this, during 1958 to 59 in the comic adventures of Tintin, Tintin came across a Yeti. Tintin in Tibet. This comic book is still popular. Because of these films, footprints, and eyewitness accounts, Yeti's myth kept growing stronger. More and more people wanted to go look for Yeti. Seeing this craze, in 1959, the US and Nepal governments came together to make some regulations. There were 3 main points. First, Nepal's government wanted to make some money from this. They charged a royalty fee of 5,000 Indian rupees for a permit to look for Yeti. Second, hunting Yeti was banned. Killing it as an act of self-defense was excusable, but they weren't allowed to actively hunt it. Nepal's government allowed them to catch Yeti alive. But any captured Yeti had to be surrendered to Nepal's government. Third, all reports related to Yeti's existence was supposed to be given to Nepal's government first, and the government's permission was mandatory before handing those over to the press. Strong regulations indeed. But the most amazing thing was that the Nepal government wasn't actually sure whether Yeti actually exists or not. One of the reasons for making these regulations was that the Nepali and American governments thought that the Yeti could be real. Even after passing these government regulations, many people went to Nepal and carried out numerous expeditions. But there were 3 such explorers who deserved to be mentioned. These men tried their best to discover the truth about Yeti. First was Irish-American explorer Peter Byrne. In his search for Yeti, he was a part of 5 expeditions and spent a total of 38 months in the Himalayas. During these expeditions, he went to the Pangboche Buddhist monastery too, located at an altitude of 13,000 feet that claims to have the remains of Yeti's hands and skull. For research, he asked for the Yeti's hand from the lamas at the monastery, but his request was refused, saying that doing so would bring bad luck to the monastery. Peter tried his best to convince the lamas, and in exchange for a donation, he finally got a finger from the remains of Yeti's hand. He came to India with this finger, and with the help of his friend, actor James Stewart, he smuggled it into London. James Stewart's wife, Gloria, hid this finger in her lingerie bag and carried it to London. In London, Professor William Osman Hill analyzed this finger and found that it wasn't a Yeti's finger, it was a human's. The second explorer was Italy's legendary climber, Reinhold Messner. He is considered to be the world's greatest mountaineer alive. Before 1986, in his books, Reinhold denied Yeti's existence, calling it nonsensical. He didn't believe that any such creature existed. But one evening in 1986, something happened that changed his belief. He was following an old Tibetan path used by Sherpas and got lost. There, he came across a big and dark creature. He saw it standing upright and running faster than humans, and jumping from one tree to another. Reinhold says that at one point, it was only 10 steps away from him. It stood there unmoving, before suddenly disappearing, and it was about 7 feet tall. And friends, after this encounter, Reinhold became obsessed with Yeti. The Yeti whose existence he used to deny, he spent 12 years looking for it. And what was his conclusion? He said that there are no Yetis. There are no human-like abominable snowmen living in the mountains. He said that Yeti is nothing but a Himalayan brown bear. Before talking further about this, let's talk about the third explorer, Daniel C. Taylor. This American man wrote the book, Yeti, The Ecology of a Mystery. He too spent many years of his life looking for Yeti. He was specially focused on Nepal's Barun Valley. It has a dense forest and gets a lot of rain. This forest is so dense that only a few people have entered it. Nepal's king advised Daniel Taylor that if he wants to find Yeti, that he should search this forest. When he got there, he saw fresh footprints. These footprints convinced him that he had found a Yeti. But alas, these weren't Yeti's footprints, they belonged to a bear, a tree bear. During their research, he found that these footprints had nail marks too. Hominoids do not have such nails, so he concluded that these footprints had to belong to an animal. To find out which animal it was, he started looking for nests that were suspected to be Yeti's lair. There, he found a hair strand, and running a DNA analysis of it revealed the entire truth. This hair belonged to a special species of bear, known as the Rukh Bahalu in Nepali, and as tree bear in English. He explained this famous photo taken by Eric Shipton in 1951. He said that while walking, these bears always place their hind legs on the footprints of the front legs. This makes it look like the animal that left those footprints must have walked on 2 legs instead of 4. When the front legs leave footprints on the ground, it leaves nail marks too. And when the hind legs step on these footprints, there are no nail marks, because the snow or mud gets pressed enough for the nail marks to be erased. And often when the hind feet overlap with the front feet, it's not a complete overlap. And so the size of these combined footprints looks bigger, so these footprints can look to be about 12 inches long. He said that if you look at the photos of Yeti's footprints carefully, you will notice the nail marks left by the hind feet at the center of the photo. So this photo of Yeti's footprint that we have here is actually a combination of the footprints left by a bear's front and hind feet. Daniel Taylor said that a bear's anatomy explains these footprints much better. Bear cubs often squeeze their paws while walking, especially when they climb trees to look for food. So it leaves a thumb-like mark in the snow, which makes it look like a human footprint. He said that when he asked the Royal Geographical Society for the photos taken by Eric Shepton of Yeti's footprints, they sent 2 photos. In the second photo, it is clearly evident that these are bear footprints. But the second photo did not go viral. Only the first photo was published in the newspapers and talked about in the media. In 1939, sponsored by the Nazi Party of Germany for a secret mission to Tibet, zoologist Ernst Schaefer came to the conclusion: Yeti does not exist. When the locals told him that a Yeti lived in the mountains, he went up the mountain with his gun and shot him. According to Ernst Schaefer, the beast that was assumed to be Yeti by the locals was actually a Tibetan bear. In 1992, before his death, he wrote a letter to Reinhold to tell him this. The first person to climb Mount Everest, Edmund Hillary, spent months looking for Yeti, and finally came to the same conclusion. Yeti does not actually exist. He said that Yeti is just a myth, born out of people's superstitions. There have been some recent research studies on Yetis, like this study from 2014 at Oxford University. A geneticist named Brian Sykes tested the DNA of more than 30 hair samples from different areas of the Himalayas. All of them were claimed to be from Yeti. Except 2 of them, all other samples were of animals like horses or bears. The 2 remaining samples did not completely match any known species. They might be from a species of animal that hasn't been discovered yet. But when the data was rechecked by other scientists, they found that Brian had made a mistake in analyzing these 2 samples. These 2 samples were from a known species too, a rare subspecies of the Himalayan brown bear. There was another research in 2017 at a university in New York. That too reached the same conclusion. They conducted DNA analysis of more than 9 alleged samples from Yeti. Not only hair, but they analyzed bones and teeth too. It found that 8 samples were either from Asian black bears, Himalayan brown bears, or Tibetan brown bears, and one of the samples was from a dog. But what about the story from the beginning of this video? The murder in Arunachal Pradesh. After hearing this story, journalists from the BBC Radio Andrew Benfield and Richard Horsey went there and tried to find out whether this worker was really killed by a Yeti. When they looked at the police FIR, they found that it said that the police did not know how the worker died.
Is a dead body that's been found. It says the body has been identified as a man who was working as a laborer. It says that the cause of death is not known.
This report didn't mention Yeti or its footprints.
No mention of a Yeti.
He found the doctor who had tested the strand of hair and claimed that it wasn't from a human or an animal. When he tested the hair, he found out that it wasn't a strand of hair. It was actually from a tree.
So we took it and we sent it for investigation, but they said no, it's not any biological species. It's not an hair. So it was some maybe parts of plant or leaf or something maybe, but not hair.
People suspected that a Yeti must have killed the worker. And when this rumor spread, people started to adding to the rumors. Today, there is no mystery anymore. We don't hear about Yeti sightings anymore. Think about it. We live in the era of smartphones. Over the last 10 to 15 years, almost every person has a smartphone. Every person is carrying a camera. So many people live in Tibet, Nepal, and the Himalayas. Had there really been something like a Yeti, we would have gotten at least 1 photograph. People's belief in supernatural and mythological beings like a Yeti is often shaped by society and culture. People believe in such things because they've been told such stories since their childhoods. These stories are repeated by people all around them. Because they believed in it since their childhoods and the societal pressure, it becomes difficult for them to refute it once they grow up. Another reason for these mysteries is the fascination. In a way, Yeti represents an idea. Escaping modern society and living with nature, being truly free. In today's boring, corporate, consumerist world, such stories help shape our desire, curiosity, and fascination. But do you know what? If you want to nurture your fascination and curiosity, you don't need to believe in such made-up stories. Because there are better things in our real world. The Himalayan mountains, where people might still be looking for Yeti, house the snow leopards. Today, there are only around 4,000 snow leopards left, and they are endangered due to climate change. We haven't run out of the possibilities our world has to offer. Experts estimate that of all the species existing on Earth right now, scientists have been able to document only 10 to 20% of them. Even now, each year, so many new species of plants and animals are discovered. In 2020, in the dense forests of Myanmar, scientists discovered a new species of monkey. Popa langur. Look at the picture. It looks like it is wearing glasses. This species has existed for 1 million years, but we found out about it only 4 years ago. Their total population is fewer than 200. It was declared critically endangered upon discovery. Last year, in 2023, on the second highest peak of Angola, scientists discovered this new species of lizards that have no legs. These lizards are called skinks because it looks like a snake. It can move its eyelids unlike a snake. In 2024, in the midnight zone of the ocean, 3,300 to 13,000 feet below the surface, the area of the ocean where even sunlight cannot reach, there, scientists discovered this new creature, glowing mystery mollusk. Its body is transparent and can become invisible in water, but its organs are visible, and it can glow like a bulb at will. Every year, numerous new animal species are discovered in the ocean.
New glowing species discovered in the deep sea.
Sea expedition reveals over 100 new species.
And the animal that can be called the closest to the Yeti was this Gigantopithecus. This 10 feet tall animal looks exactly like how Yetis are described. It was around 10 feet tall. It was an ape. Scientists say it lived from 2 million years ago to 200,000 years ago. It must have weighed around 200 to 300 kilograms. And its body used to be covered with thick fur. It might have walked on 2 legs, and look at its size compared to humans. Since its fossils have been found close to the Himalayan mountains, could it be possible that 200,000 years ago, the humans who lived there saw this animal, interacted with it, and passed on the stories of this animal generation to generation? And it is those stories that were modified later on to become Yeti's folktale in Tibet. What do you think, friends? Let me know in the comments below. Finally, I'd like to share this quote with you. We always strive for what we cannot have. And in doing so, neglect the treasures already in our grasp. It's human nature to chase the things that we don't have. But when we do this, we tend to forget the treasures we already have. So, instead of stories about the Yeti, we need to focus on the stories of those species that we have around us, worrying about them, protecting them,